Welcome to the Great Basin Smoke Dispersion Briefing for Monday, October 24th. This is Gina McGuire. Over the last 24 hours, we have seen precipitation over the southern portion of Nevada. In many of these areas, precipitation totals were anywhere from a tenth to over a third of an inch of rainfall in the strip you see colored in blue and green. We also have seen some lighter amounts of precipitation in the Sierra and north over Idaho into northern Utah. Looking now at the last 7 to 30 days, the last 7 days, observed precipitation is the image on the left. This does not account for the precipitation we saw over the last 24 hours, which is why there's no precipitation showing up over southern Nevada. However, prior to the last 24 hours, all of the rainfall and snowfall has been located over the northern half of the Great Basin and has been very significant for parts of the Sierra into western Nevada and over parts of the north. The image on the right shows the last 30 days percent of normal precipitation, and again you can see the areas colored in blue and purple indicate well above normal precipitation for the last 30 days for areas of Idaho, Wyoming, into parts of northern Nevada and Utah, and in the far west. Still over the southern half of the Great Basin, we saw well below normal precipitation. The water vapor satellite loop from this morning shows a very strong area of low pressure off the Pacific Northwest coast, which will continue lifting northeast along the coast, however still pushing moisture eastward across much of the Great Basin over the next couple of days, which will again keep this significant cloud cover across the area, and also areas of showers will affect many areas of the Great Basin. Now we'll look at the weather conditions and the dispersion for the next few days. Today the ventilation index will remain very high across much of Nevada into parts of southern Utah and the Arizona Strip as stronger south to southwest winds continue in advance of the area of low pressure. We may still see some areas of poor dispersion over parts of Idaho, Wyoming, and northern Utah where the wind flow is not quite as strong. Now if you look at the transport winds, later today we will see these winds increase across all areas of the Great Basin with the exception of the far east. South to southwest wind gusts will exceed 35 or 40 miles per hour at times across much of western Idaho into Nevada today. Also, mixing heights will remain very high across the west and still remain somewhat lower over those northern and eastern sections, again where those ventilation indices were quite a bit lower. Now looking for Tuesday, this area of low pressure lifts further north, so we have more ridging now starting to take place over the southern portion of the Great Basin, but still showers and thunderstorms expected over the northern half of the area even on Tuesday. Ventilation indices will still remain somewhat high, but will be decreasing underneath this ridge of high pressure as we start to see that ridge build a little bit further north into parts of eastern areas. Looking at the winds on Tuesday, we'll see a significant decrease in winds from today across all areas, although still see some breezy winds in the central Idaho mountains and along the Sierra. But again, this will be quite a bit less than what we'll see today. Also looking at mixing heights, they remain relatively high over parts of southern and western areas, but again, somewhat low across northern Utah into Idaho and Wyoming. As we move into Wednesday, this ridge builds further north with drier weather expected in many areas of the Great Basin, with the exception of parts of Idaho, which will still continue to see shower activity closer to the area of low pressure. We'll also see temperatures warm across the area. However, with lighter winds and drier conditions, we will see the ventilation index decrease over the southern half of the Great Basin. Looking at the individual components on Wednesday, transport winds will generally remain breezy over parts of the north and west closer to the area of low pressure, but quite a bit less over areas of Utah into the Arizona Strip and southern Nevada. Also, mixing heights will be decreasing across the region, again indicating poor dispersion on Wednesday. If we look at the forecast clearing index across Utah, you can see this progression. Today, most of Utah will remain relatively high with good dispersion. However, as we move towards Tuesday and especially Wednesday, the dispersion will generally decrease across the state. Looking at the overall amount of forecast precipitation, and you can see general showers across most of the Great Basin. However, the more significant areas of rainfall will occur across the higher elevations of the eastern and northern portion of the basin and in the Sierra. Now we'll look at the weather from Thursday through the weekend. By Thursday, this area of high pressure starts to shift further east, but still keeping dry conditions over much of Nevada into Utah and Wyoming. Another area of low pressure will be approaching off the west coast, and this will allow for increased clouds and some showers over far northwest areas up into Idaho by Thursday. Also, the ventilation index will remain fairly good, however still some poor dispersion expected over parts of the southern and eastern areas under those weaker winds and high pressure. By Friday, this low now moves into the Great Basin, spreading showers and clouds across most areas, and we'll see more significant precipitation in the north and over parts of eastern areas. Also, winds will be increasing on Friday, so we may still see some good dispersion over far western areas, but as winds remain weaker with the heavier showers, dispersion will remain much more poor over northern and eastern areas. By Saturday, this first wave moves through, still keeping some shower activity over the eastern half of the Great Basin. However, you can already see another area of low pressure approaching off the west coast. Dispersion will remain fairly good on Saturday in the wake of this area of low pressure, but we may see some areas where the wind flow is not quite as strong over parts of Utah and up into the far north and southern Nevada, where dispersion is weaker. By Sunday, the next area of low pressure moves in, spreading more precipitation and cloud cover across most of the area. If we look at the overall amount of precipitation for days 4 and 5, which takes us from Thursday through early Saturday morning, and you can still see over especially the western 2/3 of the Great Basin into California is where the most significant amounts of precipitation will occur. It does look like this stormy period will continue for the next 7 to 10 days, bringing multiple chances for precipitation across the region. Looking at the 8 to 14 day outlook, which takes us into the first week of November, we still continue with general near to above normal temperatures. However, as you can see from the image on the right, well above normal precipitation is certainly likely throughout this time period. Therefore, again, these stormy conditions will take us through the end of October into early November. That concludes our briefing for today. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us. Thank you for listening.